Good evening. This is Father Joseph Sweden,
This is Bishop Enoch.
and welcome to another live Q&A session for NFTU. As you can see from the title, today is going to be the NFTU SPOOK-TACULAR, where we are going to be talking about lots of weird things. People asking for a blessing in the chat from Vladika, so go.
The Lord bless.
And so, all right. So we're going to get started. We're kind of doing it a little bit different today. We're going to put like all the questions, comments, super chats after we get past the main topic. So basically, the stuff we're going to talk about. Feel free to comment as always, etc. We're just going to try to read them after we're done with the main stuff, so we don't get sidetracked. In any case, yeah. So basically, this episode is going to be about ruining your Halloween if you have plans. I assume most of you don't, but if you do, we're going to give you lots of reasons why you shouldn't. Getting started here today, we're going to take a look. I know that we were talking about the origins of Halloween, and that's where we ran into kind of our first brick wall. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the stuff that we assume to be the pagan origins of Halloween themselves don't have very good attribution. It's very possible it's all just made up neo-pagan garbage, which is unfortunate and common, but that is a very real possibility. So even the stuff we talk about in terms of stuff like trick-or-treating, etc., until we get further into the references, we're probably going to take it with a grain of salt. They're basically, I guess it goes back to like we're going to have to say legendary until we get a confirmed use of masks for threatening to rob people if they were, this was like, I guess you said it was Scottish, Vladika, or that's what they said?
They were supposedly a mention of a Scottish tradition in the 1500s that children would rub ashes on their faces. And they'd say, you better give her something or we're going to cause mischief. So, I mean, you can say that's trick-or-treating, but it wasn't. There's not clear evidence that it was done on October 31st.
Yeah.
It may have just been a year-round Scottish tradition of children.
Just children just randomly wanting to rob people on the regular. And, that, I mean, I know that I've heard about it I've heard about stuff like that occurring also in the Midwest in the 1800s and 1900s. The problem is that's not like, I don't know that we have a rich tradition, if you want to use that word, of kids putting ashes on their face and robbing people. We haven't investigated the sources yet. For all we know, it was, the book that it was cited from in Wikipedia got it's praise blurb from the History Channel, which we really don't take seriously ever.
That's a negative also.
Yeah, that makes its credibility go down. So that in that sense, we were kind of going to go off on how bad the history of Halloween was, and now we're realizing it might have even been more made up than we thought. In which case, it's not only bad but stupid. At least if you're partaking in a pagan tradition, that's bad. If you're partaking in a made up pagan tradition, that's just sad. So
it's sad and bad.
Yeah, it can be both. Yes, it's sad and bad. So in any case. So that kind of blew past what we were expecting in terms of trying to find information. Again, it is a live call-in. Feel free for questions and comments, but I am putting them towards the end. And so the next thing we were going to talk about, basically, I guess, was the biblical and patristic teaching on witchcraft. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can go over that. Yeah. So obviously there are numerous biblical references against witchcraft. Famous one would be, for example, Exodus, which says, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, or a wizard in some translations. Deuteronomy 18:10, neither let there be found among you anyone that shall expiate his son or daughter, making them to pass through the fire, or that consulted soothsayers, or observed dreams and omens. Neither let there be any wizard. And of course, we remember in the book of Kings, First Kings or First Samuel, depending on your translation, it says 15:23. It says, because it is like the sin of witchcraft to rebel, and like the crime of idolatry to refuse to obey. For as much therefore as thou hast rejected the word of the Lord hath also rejected thee from being king. And of course, that's the prophet Samuel speaking to King Saul. Now, notice he says that the sin of it's because it is like the sin of witchcraft to rebel. Well, why? Because witchcraft and magic, these are trying to provoke results, all right, through supernatural means to something God has denied to men, all right? And it's like the crime of idolatry to refuse to obey, all right? And
Yeah.
part of what the crime of idolatry is what worshiping false gods,
False gods,
which are oftentimes just simply demons masquerading, all right? And of course, in the end, according to First Parallel Phenomenon 10:13, it says, so Saul died for his iniquities because he transgressed the commandment of the Lord, which he had commanded and kept it not, and moreover consulted also a witch. Because remember, King Saul, after Saul had disobeyed the Lord, after he had decided he was going to offer animals the sacrifices and not wait for the prophet Samuel and the priests, and after he had descended into continuous madness, and remember Samuel eventually got possessed by a demonic spirit.
Yeah.
And at the end, because he wasn't hearing from the Lord and God had turned away from him because King Saul had turned away from God, that King Saul went to the witch of Endor. All right. Now, most of the witches, most of the sorcerers, those types.
Hello? Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so most of those sorcerers, wizards, witches, those types that have been in the kingdom of Israel, Saul had actually, in his earlier reign, had either expelled or killed most of them. All right,
Okay.
That was already, the Lord had commanded him to do that. So he had to find someone, and he found the witch of Endor, and he wanted to talk to the spirit of Samuel, the prophet Samuel, who had already reposed. And of course, we know if we're familiar with the account, and the witch does whatever her ritual is, and there's this whole debate in the church fathers about whether what comes up, from the earth, this apparition, is actually the prophet Samuel, okay? Or because it seems like the witch is surprised, like she didn't think this was actually going to happen or something. And there are some fathers who think that God actually allowed the soul of Samuel to come up from Hades, okay? Even not because the witch had called for it, but because God had called for it.
Right.
Or that this was in fact maybe a demonic apparition. Okay, so there's a little bit of division among the church fathers upon whether was this a demonic apparition. Although it does seem to me the text does indicate this was a case of God bringing up Samuel's soul, although not as a result of any power the witch had or something like that.
Right, and that either way, whatever the case,
and remember
it's still not a good thing.
Yeah, and remember what happened. Saul said, look, God has turned away from you. I mean, the prophet Samuel castigated Saul even from the grave. All right. And he wasn't too happy to be disturbed. All right.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a positive situation, nevertheless.
Either way, yeah.
Yes. And of course, we have references to the sorcerers who burned all their books in the book of Acts when the apostles preached to them. There were there was a reference in the book of Acts to the one man who had this girl who was possessed by a demon. He was using that demon. He was some sort of a sorcerer who's using that demon to predict events.
Yeah.
And such an oracles. And the apostles exorcised and drove the demon out of the girl. And then the guy got angry and wanted to. Yeah,
that was a source of income. So
exactly.
He got mad. Yeah.
Yes. So the scriptural history, the factual narrative we have, the church is always, whether in the Old or New Testament, against witchcraft, sorcery, wizardry, those things. However, most of the pagan world, there were laws against some types of witchcraft, like in the Roman Empire. They might put you to death for example, if you got caught with like a voodoo doll. They did have those in the ancient pagan Greco-Roman world, right?
Yeah. Now, because was it you mentioned? I think it was Saint Isidore of Seville who was talking about that.
Saint Isidore, other church fathers talk about this. I mean, this was mentioned constantly up into the medieval period. We have this image that when they have the witch trials in Salem, that a lot of the stuff they came up with is just sort of invented, or they got this necessarily from some slave girl who brought voodoo over. But we have mentions in the medieval period and in antiquity, going back to the Chaldeans, so about ancient Babylonians, like 4,000 years ago, all right, 3,000 years ago, of creations of wax images, dolls that are supposed to depict your enemy, all right, and you would like stick pins in them burn them in fire, do bad things to the image. And the concept was this would force some sort of reaction on the part of the one you are attacking. All right.
In a sense, it's almost, I hate to say it, but it's almost like an evil inversion of Dulia. Like, it's kind of like when we venerate the icons, our love passes to the prototype. It's almost like an evil reverse version of that.
Yes. I mean, that's the point. Okay, so witchcraft is as rebellion. All right, it's rebellion against God. So it's a demonic inversion. What you're seeing are demonic inversions of things like the teachings of Christ, the teachings of the gospel, the sacraments, the rites of the church. Witchcraft is simply the inversion of that. It's like Satanism, which it is Satanism, obviously. So you have, for example, there's a little passage from St. John Cassian I'll go over real quick because we want to keep this moving.
No problem.
Okay, so St. John Cassian in Conference 8 in chapter 21, he records what Abbas Serenus said concerning the origin of magic and witchcraft. So Abbas Serenus tells St. John Cassian the following: but when it had been mingled with the evil generation, that is when the wicked sons of Cain, began to teach wickedness to the righteous, it drew aside at the suggestion of devils to profane and harmful uses what it had innocently learnt, and audaciously taught by it the curious arts of wizards and enchantments and magical superstitions, teaching its posterity to forsake the holy worship of the divinity and to honor and worship either the elements or fire or the demons or the air of the air. How it was then that this knowledge of curious arts, of which we have spoken, in fact, this is one of the reasons some of the fathers give, among other things, about why God brought the flood. All right, so the world had been subsumed in wickedness and evil that we had never seen before, and part of this was demonic forces teaching people how to do witchcraft. Okay, and apparently it was considered horrible enough that God was going to destroy most of the human race and of most of animal life. How it was then that this knowledge of curious arts, of which we have spoken, did not perish in the deluge or the flood, but became known to the ages that followed, should, I think, be briefly explained, as the occasion of this discussion suggests, although the answer to the question raised scarcely requires it. And so, as ancient tradition tells us, Ham, the son of Noah, who had been taught these superstitions and wicked and profane arts, as he knew that he could not possibly bring any handbook on these subjects into the ark, into which he was to enter with his good father and holy brothers, inscribed these nefarious arts and profane devices on plates of various metals, which could not be destroyed by the flood of waters, and on hard rocks. And when the flood was over, he hunted for them with the same inquisitiveness with which he had concealed them, and so transmitted to his descendants a seedbed of profanity and perpetual sin, in this way, then, that common notion according to which men believe that angels delivered to men enchantments and diverse arts is in truth fulfilled. So, in other words, according to Abbas Serenus and the Desert Fathers, I would assume, the way many of these magical incantations, these acts of witchcraft survived, was Ham simply, and I guess his followers, whoever, inscribed this on metal, because obviously the metal plate is going to survive, or if you inscribe something on a mountain face, it's going to survive the flood. All right. And now he mentions men believe that angels delivered to men enchantments and diverse arts is in truth fulfilled. Well, yes, of course, they're evil angels. All right. And this is the point. What we call demons. And it must be remembered that even during the times in which the church was triumphant into these areas, converting the pagans and through repentance and baptism, you have figures like Saint Odo of Canterbury and who reposed in 959. And he, like other church figures, has to exhort people not to fall back into superstition, all right, from which they came. And he says in his Canon 9, he says, "We admonish that fasting with alms be very carefully observed, for these are the three wings which carry saints to heaven. Wherefore endeavor to keep the fast of Lent and of the 4 seasons, and other lawful fasts, as of the 4th and 6th days of the week, Wednesdays and Fridays, with great vigilance, and above all the Lord's Day and the festival of the saints. You are to take care that ye observe with all caution by ceasing from secular work. Consent to no vain superstition, nor worship the creature more than the Creator. This referencing Romans, with magical illusions. For they who do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. And of course, so there's obviously consistent reference throughout church history in opposition to witchcraft, sorcery, necromancy. Whether you consider it, when people use those Ouija boards, I know the claim is that Parker Brothers invented it in 1910 or whatever, but that doesn't matter, okay? Because the concept is someone still trying to use necromancy through some means, which is forbidden specifically by the scriptures in church, all right? Because it will lead not to encounters with your dead relatives. It will lead to encounters with demons masquerading. At best, they're going to masquerade as dead relatives. And let me give a short anecdotal reference talk for just 2 minutes real quick, Father.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
I have an interesting story that my father told me when I was 18. All right. And he had never told us before. I had only heard hints of it. It was like really, really hush-hush. That was when my father was 14 and his sister was 12. They had many big families. They thought it was fun. They weren't supposed to do it, but they used a Ouija board. Okay. And they just thought it was a joke. And the Ouija board actually told them that my aunt, his sister, was going to be murdered. And it said your husband's going to be murdered, and your son's going to be murdered. And it said like something like the date that was going to happen on. And that actually happened.
All right?
Wow. And so my father, at that point, he was scared when he was like, that's why he said never get involved with that. All right. Now, obviously, how did the demon know? I don't think the demon knew anything. I think, in essence, the demon simply
didn't know the future. Probably helped cause that.
Yeah, exactly. I think they were trying to arrange events that would. It was just a tragic, murder. People break into the house, shotguns, killed. I mean, it was just terrible. I didn't even learn about it until I was 18 because my father was so shocked about it. But that was anyway. So there are a lot of these. I'm sure there are other people who have similar anecdotal experiences, all right, about this.
Not like that. I don't. I mean, I'm lucky that I had very little experience with this stuff as a kid. But I mean, I've heard horror stories, but nothing like that.
The area I grew up in rural East North Carolina, we had one. I mean, there were weird stories about like coven of witches who were like on a church board. I mean, there was just all kinds of terrible things, and it wasn't just satanic panic stuff. It was
that about a lot of the satanic panic stuff that came out in the 80s that they said was exaggerated. We're seeing come back now. And what I mean by that is, when they were talking about like, oh, there's Satanists, molesting and killing little kids, and now we're finding out, oh, wait, it was an even bigger group of people who were.
In other words, it actually happened. It was actually true. All right.
And they called it this, and it was the media calling it the satanic panic to kind of desensitize the population.
Well, do you remember that Army lieutenant colonel? And you can look this up real quick. He was a lieutenant colonel of the Army. And he was like a practicing Wiccan or Satanist, and he had some like weird eyebrows or something like that. And he was involved with this molestation of children on a base like San Diego or San Francisco, something like that happened. And the Army sort of just hushed it all up for years. This guy.
I think this is a reference to the Temple of Set.
Okay, do you have an image of what the guy's?
Yep. Give me a second. It is. I'm going to share it. Hold.
Well, take Saint Oda off. Let's not associate Saint Oda with this man.
Yeah, that's a good point. Give me a moment. Let me take the banner off first. I'll just hold on.
But I sort of have vague memories of that. And
trust me. I'll bring it right back. I'll bring those memories right back for you now. Give me a moment.
Yeah, that's it. What's his name?
Lieutenant. Hold on, let me go back. I'll tell you right now.
I can't read it.
It is. Why doesn't it say his name? It is Michael Aquino.
Oh, okay, Aquino. All right.
Here he's being more creepy.
Yeah, and I think he ended up committing suicide a few years later. But he was involved in several of these scandals, and so were others in the Pentagon and on military bases, molesting children.
Wow.
And they kind of covered it up. Then years later, there was evidence that no, this actually did happen. Obviously, there was a reason that when Orthodoxy took power, to be blunt, in society, we under the Emperor Saint Constantine in the Roman Empire, then his sons, successors, we did do things like, the Roman Christian emperors did say, if we find you doing stuff like divination, you're going to be driven out of the city. All right. If we find you doing witchcraft, you're going to be burned at the stake. All right. Now, you can argue they didn't do this all the time. They just, maybe beat them up, like judicial beatings or whatever. All right. But, everyone in that society, the ancient society, were fully aware of the supernatural. Nobody doubted its existence. It's factual because it is factual. All right. We suppress these things, and it took time, but after the fall of the West and of obviously the fall of the East through communism, and even the situation today, you've seen a resurrection, a resuscitation of these evil. Well, to some extent you can argue they never really went away; they just went underground. We drove them underground. So they were lessened. But we had, the revival of theosophy in the 19th century. That was almost a predecessor to all the terrible things that happened in Russia. So, the patristic teaching is that these are real events, these are real demonic forces. They are not to be trifled with. You're not going to make some bargain with the devil and think you're going to get away with it. All right?
Yeah.
You can claim whatever spirit appears, you can claim that. But in the end, you're going to be, your soul is going to be claimed, all right, because you didn't repent, all right. And is that sort of fire and brimstone? Yeah, because it's true. It's sort of a warning of somebody. Okay, so what's the? We want to go on to ghosts real quick. So what are ghosts?
Yeah.
Well, the traditional answer is simply in general, disembodied souls of humans, after the particular judgment, are remanded either to paradise or to Hades, to the two general states. The idea that there are disembodied human souls to simply linger around for years, decades, all right, that are in fact disembodied souls, which is what we think of as ghosts. There doesn't seem to be any strong evidence from the church fathers or the scriptures that's the truth. Now, you do, of course, have references in the scriptures, like the case of the prophet Samuel, or the church fathers of maybe a case where God allows the soul of somebody from either paradise or Hades to appear. Okay, so you can call that a ghost in that sense, but I don't think, not in the classical way we're thinking of it. All right.
Yeah, there's no Caspers or anything.
Yeah. Now you do have in the teaching of the Telonia that the soul will, I think a few days afterwards be taken around to places and such, to be shown by angels, to be shown things. All right, you're not being taken around just do whatever you want. All right. So the general consensus is that what we call ghosts, if they are in fact supernatural apparitions, they're not just whatever fakes or what have you, or illusions, that they are demonic apparitions of some sort. They're basically
you mentioned right, and you mentioned that Saint John Chrysostom in one of his discourses, and I have that here.
Okay.
We can put that on the screen. Give me a moment. And he basically debunks this concept. So give me just a moment while I put that up and get that there. And let me see here if I can. Okay, so now, I mean, the title of it is pretty self-explanatory. It says, concerning Lazarus and the souls of those that die a violent death do not become wandering spirits, concerning also future judgment and charity. So, I mean, it's right there in the title, but the point is, obviously, we can go into a little more detail.
Now, if you go down to section 2, to the second paragraph before section 2.
Okay, the second paragraph before section 2?
Yeah, it begins with however with your permission.
Right, okay. However, with your permission, let us return to the proposed subject. It came to pass, it said, that Lazarus died, and he was carried up by angels. Here, before I proceed, I desire to remove a wrong impression from your minds, for it is a fact that many of the less instructed think that the souls of those who die a violent death become wandering spirits or demons.
Now, by the way, when they use the word demon in that sense, when he was speaking to the audience in Greek, daimonia, or daimonia, did not necessarily have the connotation of just simply sort of a spirit. All right. Now, today it means demon, and by his time it was increasingly becoming that. But people thought they were just sort of these, Anyway, go ahead, continue.
Wandering spirits.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but this is not so. I repeat, it is not so. For not the souls of those who die a violent death become demons, but rather those of the souls of those who live in sin. Not that their nature is changed, but that in their desires they imitate the evil nature of demons. Showing this very thing to the Jews, Christ said, "Ye are like the children of the devil." John 7:44.
You are the children of the devil.
Oh, sorry about that. Ye are the children of the devil. He said that they were the children of the devil, not because they were changed into a nature like his, but because they performed actions like his. Wherefore he also adds, "For the lusts of your father ye will do." Also John says, "O generation of vipers, who hath warned you to flee from the wrath to come. Do therefore works meet for repentance, and think not to say we have Abraham as our father." Matthew 3:7-9. The scripture, therefore, is accustomed to base the laws of relationships not on natural origin, but on good or evil disposition. And to those whom one shows similarity of manners and actions, the scripture declares him to be their son or their brother. But for what object did the evil one introduce this wicked saying? It is because he would strive to undermine the glory of the martyrs. For since these also died a violent death, he did this with the intention of spreading low estimation of them. This, however, he's unable to effect. They remain in possession of their former glory. But another and more grievous thing has he brought to pass. He has, by these means, persuaded the wizards who do his work to murder many innocent children, expecting them to become wandering spirits and afterwards to be their servants. These notions are...
Okay, so where are we at again? Right after section 2?
Yes, but these notions are false.
I'm sorry, I lost the place. I had to step away for a second. Okay, continue reading. Go ahead.
But these notions are false. I repeat, they are false. What then if the demons say, "I am the spirit of such and such a monk"? Neither because of this do I credit the notion, since evil spirits say so to deceive those who listen to them.
Now, interestingly, to go back to relate it to the witch question. Okay. Mm-hmm. It says, "But another and more grievous thing he has brought to pass. He has by these means persuaded the wizards," that is, magic, sorcerers, witches, etc., "who do his work to murder many innocent children." So St. Chrysostom is speaking about something that was happening in his day. All right. And there are, I think, there's evidence from Greco-Roman and other Chaldean sources of killing children, innocent children, for the use of their blood. Okay. Now, that is mentioned. In fact, in the medieval and early modern period, they would find, witches who would confess to have done these things. Now, people may dispute whether the confessions were, however they were extracted, but that is a continuous report apparently since antiquity. All right, and if we're talking about the Sakino, these other, pretty evil guys who
satanic temple people,
who they were talking about, molesting children and then killing the children. And using their blood for rituals. And then, of course, there's, the stuff that happened in Belarus and in other areas, from Hasid. It wasn't all Jews, but it was certainly certain Hasidic cults that practiced Kabbalah that did some similar stuff, which is not disputed by even some Israeli historians. And, we can connect this also to abortion as well. There's, this pervading, a force of evil, that's obviously Satan, that will go after children. All right. And it says expecting them to become wandering spirits and afterwards to be their servants. So in other words, you have like wizards, they murder the kids and like, oh, we're going to turn these into like our wandering souls that are going to be, it's insane. It's obviously not what's going to happen to the souls of the children. But I'm sorry, just continue.
Well, I was gonna point out that it's interesting that the reasoning always changes. Whether ultimately, it's always a lust for power, but the demons always play the exact same game, and I think it's only a fairly recent contention that these were exaggerations, so on and so forth. It seems like most of history got it right, or at least most of Christian history got it right in kind of nailing down what these people were. And so we really have to even reconsider things like the Salem witch trials and things that early practices of voodoo in certain parts of the South, like Louisiana, and what these people were really doing, because they're often presented in modern notions as just quaint, harmless rituals that were transformed by the evil Christians into some kind of, crime that was hurting people, when in fact it was probably a crime that was hurting people.
Yes.
So we have to kind of really reevaluate our understanding of the past in the past few decades and apply it against the lens of the past few centuries, and it'll make a lot more sense.
And especially go back into antiquity, where you find similar events about the sacrifice of children. All right.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by the ancient voodoo dolls. I didn't even know that.
Because in ancient, the ancient idolatrous religions, there was no distinction between witchcraft and the worship of Moloch or Tiamat or whoever. Okay, it was all part of their religious ritual. Okay, so when they took the baby and they put it into they burned it alive, that was, or they drained the blood from the child for magical rituals. That was all part of the worship of these the heathen gods, which are demons, the scripture says. Now, if you continue reading, Saint Chrysostom goes on and on about how these souls that are appearing to people, they are not the souls of the departed. He just emphasizes this more and more. So if you want a interesting patristic reference to how the church views ghosts, I would recommend everyone read
Let me put this is the 4 discourses, and the one we're reading from is discourse number 2.
Yes.
Right. Give me just a moment here while I add that, so we can continue on that in just a moment. No, I'm going to edit that one, and this can be found here. And we're on discourse 2 right now. So this is something, if you're ever looking for, a good patristic passage on, ghosts and such, this is a really good one to deal with. And so it says here, for this reason, St. Paul stopped their mouth, even when speaking the truth, in order that they might not, on this pretext, at another time mingle falsehood with the truth, and still be deemed worthy of credit. For when they said, these men are servants of the Most High God, which show us the way into salvation, Acts 16:17, being grieved in spirit, he rebuked the sorceress and commanded the spirits to go out. What evil was there in saying, these men are servants of the Most High God? Be that as it may, since many of the more weak-minded cannot always know how to decide concerning things spoken by demons, he at once put a stop to any credence to them. If, he implied, thou art one of those in dishonor, thou hast no liberty of speaking. Be silent and open not thy mouth. It is not thy office to preach. This is the privilege of the apostles. Why dost thou arrogate to thyself that which is not thine? Be silent, thou art fallen from honor. End quote. The same thing also Christ did when the evil spirits said to him, we know thee who thou art. Mark 1:24, Luke 4:24. He rebuked them with great severity, teaching us never to listen to spirits, not even when they say what is true. Having learnt this, therefore, let us not trust at all in an evil spirit, even though he speak the truth. Let us avoid him and turn away. Sound doctrine and saving truth are to be learned with accuracy, not from evil spirits, but from the Holy Scripture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's a reference to Acts 16:17, what we were speaking about earlier, of the girl who was sort of possessed.
Yeah. And so basically, but this is also a good time to remember that the spirit of carelessness that pervades a lot of the more innocent celebrations and concepts of Halloween, if we can even call them that, because we know that they're very sinister in their origins, are what lead people directly into what seem to be even more deeply evil spiritual practices, and more importantly, ones that eventually lead to sins like divination, etc. And as Ladika mentioned, family members of his had a rather tragic ending with this. So there's a real practical lesson to be learned here, and one that's not simply, we tend to like, that's a religious thing. In this, we're supposed to be even skeptical of the demons, because even when they're telling the truth, they might have an agenda behind it. Yeah. And so that's what St. John is trying to say here, to focus on accuracy, use the teachings of God, and stop looking for false guidance. But it's a slippery slope, and it starts with the costumes and candy. I hate to say that. Nobody believed the slippery slope thing with the gay marriage, and look where we are now. The point is, there is a slippery slope, and once you start giving into evil, it grows.
Okay. And now the next topic we wanted to discuss.
Okay, 1 moment. Let me take that off screen. And let me see. Yeah, witchcraft. Aliens.
All right, what do you have to say, Father?
Well, they're demons.
Absolutely.
Let me see here. Probably the best recent writer. We always you can always reference his Blessed Seraphim Rose. Father Seraphim wrote, I believe it was in Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, where he starts talking about the UFO phenomenon. They're just demonic apparitions. This is what it comes down to. If it's not a easily explainable phenomena, which sometimes it can be, a lot of these supposed UFOs are obviously just planes of some kind, etc. But when it starts getting to the deeper, creepier stuff, well, this is an interesting. Okay, here we got some questions. Hold on 1 moment.
Well, did we want to finish the topics real quick, then take the questions?
Well, yeah, but these are kind of related to it, so that's why I asked.
Go ahead.
The first one, because it's from the last topic. Reader John asks, what are the telltale signs that you are in the presence of a demon?
In the presence of a demon?
Yeah.
I have heard people who have had experiences say there's sort of this feeling of malice that's directed toward you. It's like a palpable feeling of hatred.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. You have a physical reaction of your body sometimes. Like you feel like you're going to vomit. You just feel physically sick. There is common reporting of like cold spots. I know that a lot of these paranormal investigators, when they're not assuming they're not making everything up, there does seem to be some anecdotal evidence about that as well. Now,
I've heard also of foul stench occasionally.
Stench, yes, a bad smell. Just like among the bodies of the saints, we have an aromatic smell of flowers, right. But among the demons, there is an even worse smell.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, those are sort of telltale signs. There are other signs. In case of demonic possession, for example, is the person blaspheming, our Lord and His Mother, the saints? Are they constantly cursing? Are they, there's more elaborate examples or things flying around.
Right, because that's like possession and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So but in the case of what do you do? Well, all Orthodox Christians should have holy water. All right. Ask your priest for some holy water. It's not like it's a reserve only of the clergy to possess the holy water.
Right. Everyone should have holy water.
You take the holy water and you sprinkle it around your house. All right. And you say some of the Psalms. All right. You read through the Psalter. All right. Another point to make is in Orthodoxy, we do not have this same rule that for some reason took root in Roman Catholicism, where they have this bureaucratic process of getting a priest to do an exorcism, right. Or even to sprinkle holy water around a house and to say some prayers to drive out a demonic presence. All right, and there's no reason.
One thing definitely to remember is that, especially in the Orthodox West, an exorcist was a minor order.
Yeah, well, that existed in the East as well. It's just got all folded into a reader and subdeacon, and such. But even monks, look, even you had unordained monks who had the role of exorcist in many cases. In the Desert Fathers, you can read examples of this. All right, so obviously gut-wrenching feeling, overwhelming power amongst the presence of hate, bad smell, change in temperature in the room. Those are some, maybe things start to move, pictures fall off the things
just,
like. Now you got to remember, you have to even if you made a mistake and like, oh well, it's just, I don't know, a cold spot due to the heater not working. All right, obviously, even if you made a mistake and it wasn't a demonic presence, there's not going to be any negative repercussions to sprinkling holy water around the room and reading Psalm 50.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So and then if it's just a cold spot, then you just have a much holier cold spot.
Yeah.
All right. And so let me see the next question. Vladika, Father, are demons able to read your thoughts, or can only the Lord?
I don't think demons can read your thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, unless a demon's possessing you. Unless you're possessed.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're in your brain.
I think they can try to guess what you're thinking. I think they can give suggestions to you. Obviously, they can put thoughts and they can sort of give evil suggestions. Obviously,
right.
But I don't think they have. I don't think they have telepathic power, forcible telepathic powers. Now, if you make some kind of pact with them, obviously it's quite different.
Yeah, because you're giving them permission to enter your soul. But yeah, you have to remember, the longer timeline of experience that you have, the greater perspective it appears to that they have psychic powers, etc. Yeah. It's just the predictable nature of humanity. And as a grandparent, I understand that. If even an old man can see how predictable people are in the third generation, how much more predictable do you look to a demon who's got 5,000-6,000 years of experience?
Yeah, dealing with millions of people over and over again. In fact, exactly. they probably possess thousands of people, so they know all the types of personality. They know they can just remember St. Augustine in his City of God, which is a great book. I think people should read it. In the City of God, he asks this question of how is it you would have these like demonic, like these oracles that would predict events like earthquakes, and then it would happen. Well, what St. Augustine points out is oftentimes it doesn't happen simultaneously. The oracle, maybe it happened an hour before, and the demon just flew at extreme speed from Antioch to Mount Olympus or wherever the oracle of Apollo was. I can't quite remember. And told the demon. The other point is, St. Augustine says demons are fallen angels, so they have the ability to look into the earth and to tell. Or he didn't understand about tectonic plates, but they thought like they did understand there was some sort of shifting fluid down there, like maybe water, and the demon might just have greater knowledge of the physical processes that bring about an earthquake. All right, that doesn't mean the demon has any more psychic abilities than using a modern earthquake machine. We have, it's just have psychic ability.
Right. Well, one thing I like to point out is
it's all a trick in a certain way.
Yeah.
When they pretend they have these abilities.
Yeah, take the Farmer's Almanac. I mean, using the processes and the historical gathering that they've gathered over a long period of time, they can pretty accurately predict the weather for the coming year. A demon has that and more. So the point is, even if humans can do that to some level of accuracy, demons are going to just have a whole lot more data to work with. That doesn't mean that they have, they don't have a supernatural ability in that sense. They're just old. And so that's kind of one thing to remember, is that sometimes it can feel like, if they know this much, like how can I stop them? It's important to remember that the fathers say that demons lack humility, whereas we in repentance do not. And because of that, they're still capable of making mistakes. And because of that, you shouldn't fear them. Now, let me see here. Wazna asks, is randomly getting an overwhelming feeling or numbness, sadness, being a sign of being under demonic attack? Well, at least with despair, I know that's I would say it could be.
Yes, it can be. I mean, at the very least, it's a failing.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, obviously, a demon can take advantage of that. Remember, we have to fight against the world, the flesh, and the devil. as the apostle says. So we have our own fallen flesh we're contending with. We have the world around us and its sinfulness, which is impinging on us. And we have the devil, and the demons attacking us.
Yep.
So they can take advantage of all these. It's just like if somebody has a mental illness. I mean, you can have people who have literally brain damage and they think, and they're insane. Okay.
Right.
That does not mean the demon's not going to also try to take advantage of that situation. Right. I mean, he caused it, but, demons are going to take advantage of whatever they can. Right.
Yep.
Because they're not, because they're basically, they're evil. They want to do harm. They want you, to do as much harm to yourself and others as possible. So,
well, I'd like to point out, and I know I'm bringing something from modern culture here, and I know this may be controversial to even discuss, but if we talk about the Andrew Tate trial, they had literally committed a massive amount of time and effort into how to manipulate women into giving up their will. I'm not going to go into any great detail, but my point is, if humans are capable of not only that level of manipulation and that level of opportunism, imagine what kind of thoughts, if we can, or what kind of plans a demon has.
Okay, well, let's get back just for a few more minutes on the alien subject. So obviously the Christian answer is aliens or demonic apparitions. There's only a few examples. A few possibilities. One, like what is a UFO, right? Either it's a secret government spy plane. 2, someone made something up. Well, there's more. There's probably 4 options. 3, it's I hate to use the swamp gas explanation. It's something some natural explanation that you could figure out. Or 4, it is the prince of the powers of the air. All right, as the scriptures talk about, a demonic apparition of the air. And especially as you get to these grays that have the giant eyes, some people have conversations with them where they're like, well, they're going to bring humans to greater knowledge, and they're preparing.
That sounds like a demon.
Exactly. Yeah. As soon as something talks about that, this is not from God. As soon as it says we're coming to bring world peace, that is not from God. God brings peace in a totally different manner. There's not going to be world peace and the way we think of it. All right, this liberal utopia as in this age that happens after the second coming. All right, so obviously that's a deception, and also I think the alien deception, demonic deception. Because remember, if a demon appears to somebody today, let's say with horns and hooves and bat wings, okay, a lot of people are probably going to get freaked out, and maybe some of those people might remember, what grandma told them in Sundays, what they learned in Sunday school or something, and they might start looking into the Bible, or that's not what they want you to do. All right.
Right.
So if they want to encourage the idea of atheism, agnosticism, spiritism, all these false ideologies in the minds of men, materialism, etc. So appearing to aliens, well, there seems to be a perfectly materialistic, if you know what I'm meaning, explanation to this. All right.
Right.
That you could say, oh, they quote unquote evolved on some other planet and they came to visit us. All right. So that's sort of reinforces the Darwinistic materialistic worldview. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think it's pretty evident that's the case, and all this so-called disclosure of from the government about a jet fighter supposedly following some aircraft, assuming that's even real footage. How do I know that's not some Soviet drone from 1985?
Right. And then there's
it's not a drone that the CIA was operating and testing against the military to see could the military catch it.
And we've dealt with so many even global government psyops over the past few years that it was almost predictable to a large sector of the population when they were going to pull up these little hoax aliens that they found, and they were going to be like, well, it's time we reveal what's in the secret government files. And everyone was like, we know what you're going to do. This is all part of a manipulative trick. And so I think a lot of people aren't falling for it anymore, and they want to find the more traditional answers to these things. And that's it. It's that this is an illusion. Or it could be a natural phenomenon, or it could be a demon. It's simple enough. We do have another question. Constantine of Kentucky asks, do you think a lot of, not necessarily all of, our modern mental illnesses are just secular attempts to explain and make sense of what in reality can just be demonic oppression?
That's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone is assaulted by demons. All of us.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a man upon the earth who's not, at some point, the demons are not attacking him in some subtle way. So,
well, I think,
that's possible. The problem is that there's this whole other question about how much of what modern psychiatry say are mental illnesses are actually mental illnesses. It could be you have a health problem. Maybe you don't have enough vitamin D, all right, and your brain's not working correctly. It could be you're just upset. Your girlfriend broke up with you or whatever.
Well, and a lot of it are temptations.
Yeah. Yes, I understand, but I'm just saying there's the overprescription and overdiagnosis. There's the collapse. Modern society, the family structure has collapsed. People no longer have even something like confession to go to. Most people don't have that. America is a Protestant culture. Unfortunately, that doesn't accept that in any sense. So
not yet.
Not yet. We're
working on it.
Not yet. So I think that demonic oppression certainly constitutes an element of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would
because
agree.
Again, the point is the demons are going to take advantage of whatever they can. All right, then they're not going to let an opportunity pass them by.
So. Yeah, I think, I think what is telling, especially about modern society right now, when it comes to mental illness and things like that, is that it seems very clear that the psychological community seems undecided on what's a mental illness and what's not. And what I mean by that is that we now have things like high-functioning sociopaths and psychopaths, which to me just sounds like they're high-functioning people with emotional problems. Meanwhile, people with gender dysphoria, which used to be considered a serious illness that needed to be treated so that the person could live a normal life, is now being prescribed literally destructive medications and surgeries that are going to permanently alter them, and I hate not even permanently damage them, because they're usually irreversible. So yeah, I think that to a large degree, that a lot of it is demonic oppression. It might just be that they don't have enough certain vitamins, etc. And the concept of the diagnosis as we do it today is so inherently flawed that I hate to say it, but the church as curative would still be a much better way of handling things in many cases than otherwise. I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate medical concerns, but I think they're far fewer in number than people realize.
Yeah, and you have to also realize the vast, I have a hunch that the vast majority of psychiatrists and psychologists are probably not going to be people who have anything like a Christian worldview that even approaches how we understand them, how we understand something should be. Even they don't even have probably something like a conservative Protestant worldview, which is still heterodox, but there's something in it that approaches closer than atheism. All right, and talk about diagnosis. Remember, up until the 70s, homosexual attractions, if you had those, that was considered rightly to be some kind of mental defect, a mental illness. All right. Then suddenly it was voted not to be. All right. A lot by the standards of even the 20s, 1920s or 1950s, probably a lot of people today would belong in a mental asylum.
Yeah,
right.
I completely agree. And the worst part is that when they talked about these things in the 1920s and the 1950s, they seemed to know what the results would be. And yet when we see these results and what they're happening, people seem surprised. Like, why? We didn't know that they would try to groom the children after you allow, a pushing of homosexual agenda. So how did that happen? Well, it's not a coincidence. They knew that in the 20s and 50s.
That's from a pastoral perspective, if you are having the psychiatric and psychological establishment that are teaching people, these attractions are normal, then we're having to fight against that. All right. They're putting ideas into people's heads.
Exactly.
That they weren't even there. Okay. And people who have these demonic attacks, these problems, now they're being confirmed by the entire establishment into this destructive lifestyle. All right.
Because they make money off it.
Exactly. And also, there's also a demonic plan behind it to destroy man.
Of course.
And even making money, obviously, that's part of it. They're appealing to the greed of these people. All right. Okay. So, All right.
Yeah.
And what's the next subject, Father?
Let me quickly look here. Okay. The next one, I guess, would be the cryptids. We were gonna do. I guess we were gonna do more discussions of this. And hold on, we have. Let me just put this up here. Yeah, we are. I mean, I am at least, and I'm pretty sure Bishop Enoch is to a large degree also very skeptical of a lot of things in modern science and psychiatry. You'd be surprised at how many simple, old-fashioned remedies are usually the best physical solutions for a lot of modern problems.
There's the famous Chatham House Rules report where the scientist who was speaking, obviously, on Chatham House rules in England, you can't say you can be a Nobel laureate, but the rule is that no one can. You can publish what you wrote in the speech, but you can't say who said it. It was something like as much as 70% of modern science is not reproducible. Yeah. You're simply dealing with what are called metadata analysis or metadata of metadata analysis. They're not really going through experiments and testing them dozens of times across the globe and confirming things. All right.
And if you can't reproduce it, it's not a valid conclusion, so it shouldn't be accepted as scientific fact.
Yes, it's speculation at best.
Okay, and here's a question. I'm not quite sure. Let me read it from Brasilia. It says, is there in the U.S. the article of St. Nectaria of Optina translated by Seraphim Rose? A full description of demonic possession process of famous Russian necromancer Vikov.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. If anyone in the group chat who has read more of Father Seraphim's writings, maybe it was in the Orthodox Word, but I wouldn't have that.
Because if you think about it, Saint Nectaria of Optina, the Optina elders in the 1860s, 70s, they dealt with the people who were theosophists. They had people coming to their hermitage who were possessed or were involved in occult ceremonies with seances. So, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, it would.
Because that would apply directly to how moderns would deal with, occultism. Right? Because it's the same experience. All right.
And so, and so that's, I agree. And that we'll try to see if we can find that, and hopefully somebody in the group can. Okay. And so finally, I guess the last topic we're going to deal with before we just go to straight, open questions. If anyone wants to jump in, remember it is a live Q&A. So you can either, of course, leave comments that we'll respond to, or you can click on the link in blue at the top of the chat and join the discussion. So finally, we've covered this before a little bit, that's cryptids. These are, your random stuff like your dogmen, your vampires, your werewolves, your what other ones? Bigfoot, etc. We did cover on the Dogman episode, it's for about an hour, basically, that if it's, St. Augustine and other fathers teach if it can react like a human, talks like a human, communicates as a human in a different way, it's probably a human. So that's simple enough. Vampires are a little bit trickier. Can I put up the thing from Gab that I saw, and then
Go ahead.
Just see. Yeah, give me a second, because that was interesting. Yeah, from our Father Marco in Romania. And give me a moment. I'm going to share this. And so let's going to put this up. And so I'm going to read it. First, I'm going to show the picture. That is a grave with a cage on it. Now, I know that there's other reasons that this is done, and we're going to go through that, but I'm just going to read the post. So Father Marco says, in the picture, a tomb for a vampire, the grave is completely locked with a special silver/iron cage. Orthodox Church implicitly accepts the existence of such creatures. According to the archaeologist John R. Sterrett, who published a long article for the magazine The Nation in 1899, Greeks still actively believed in vampires at the end of the 19th century. By his accounts, the main coming of existence of a vampire is excommunication from the Holy Orthodox Church. Indeed, we find in the Euchologion a special prayer at the end of funerals named Prayer for the Dissolving of the Body and Ascending of the Soul, in which we entreat the Lord to save the soul of the dead and let his body return to the earth. This prayer is read to prevent the body to stay incorrupt and to rot. A second reason is found in practicing magics and necromancy while alive. The demons then take possession of the body once the dark soul is given to hell. In Dr. Sterrett's words, there are two kinds of vampires, the malignant ones and the unharmful ones. The first type is certainly the most known, the one who suck your blood and eats the victims, making them vampires as well. They come out from the grave at the moon's light and torment the living. The second type of vampire is a benevolent kind that limits itself to mocking Christians during the night, perhaps on dream time. Starrett says that the vampire is basically a demon-possessed corpse. The original soul is damned or becomes a ghost. The dead body is then inhabited by an evil entity that moves and uses it. The archaeologist points out that in Crete, priests were very skilled in I assume he means hunting,
Yes.
and exorcising vampires. Friday night, usually around after Vespers, the priest would go to the empty grave of a found vampire. You can see how many tombs result self-opened, and starts a series of exorcisms over the body. A parastas service will follow. Sometimes, if witnesses declare that a specific body has been spotted in a town or in a village, the tomb has to be caged. In Romania and Greece, vampires' bodies were often cremated after exorcisms to prevent future harmful behaviors. The last vampire has been spotted in Romania in 2008. An entire village declared to have seen the vampire arising at night, so they took the body out of the grave and burnt it. The majority of the town and police chief were present to the ceremony. The mayor of the town and the police chief were present to the ceremony. And so now I know that you mentioned that there's other reasons they put these bodies in cages like that.
It's called a Mortsgate.
Okay, a Mortsgate.
And the explanation I have seen was in the 19th century, it was not uncommon for medical schools to steal bodies.
Wow.
Medical students would go, they had to dig, they had to do autopsies, they believed, on bodies for biology, and they would go to the graveyard and see who had just been buried, and they would dig up your relatives' bodies and steal it. And then they would later take the organs out and strip off the flesh and sell the skeleton. Medical schools sometimes had a bad reputation, but also other thieves, people would dig up bodies if they felt you were rich, if they felt you had jewels on your corpse or something like that. So that's an explanation I have heard for. I'm not saying there weren't some people who thought, well, maybe there's now what they describe as a vampire, I have heard called a revenant.
Yeah.
Which, and there are accounts from the early medieval and mid-medieval period of revenants. So, I mean, I'd have to do more research into this. Now, in the Epiphany water blessing for at least the Western Rite on January 6th, the Epiphany blessing, it should be noted that there is in the English translation, there is when consecrating the water, it lists a series of demonic forces that may the holy water be used against, and it mentions the word vampires. I think the Latin word is like strigoi or strigai, because that was the question is that an accurate translation? Vampire could mean many different things to many different people. Also, it could mean sort of like a demon that sort of tries to drain energy from you. I don't know how that happens, but I'm just saying I'd have to do a little bit more research. Some of this is a very complicated subject, as I mentioned earlier before the stream. If you read St. Isidore's etymologies, there are many chapters dedicated to this subject.
Yeah,
where he talks about hydromancers, geomancers, various types of magicians and demonic apparitions and encounters. And St. Isidore, around 600, when he wrote that text, was categorizing all the previous patristic knowledge that he had learned either by word of mouth or writing. So I'm not saying I'm not saying it's impossible that a demon could take possession of the corpse of like somebody who made a pact with the devil. Right. Yeah. I think there is, though, some degree of a little bit of healthy skepticism you need in Orthodoxy.
You need to be, yeah. You have to be
about that type of subject. Yeah. Right now, if I see something like that and it's definitely physical, obviously, and it's not like a demonic apparition, yeah, I will believe it. I'm not discounting the possibility. I'm not, going to that degree. So, and that's
we have a question here. Hold on. Josh Lopez asks, my family taught that human-animal hybrids were the result of bestiality. What does the church talk about that?
Well, first off, when we talk about dogmen or the cyclops or whatever, the various creatures like that, the centaurs and the fawns that Saint Anthony the Great saw in the desert, they were not considered to be products of humans breeding with animals. They were considered to be humans that had been, for whatever reason, God had cursed a tribe of people to look like an animal, or they had, for some environmental reason, they had become mutated to look like that. So I would reference back to the Dogman episode if you want to get that whole chapter.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put a link to it also in the.
Though St. Augustine does say that if these indeed do exist, right?
Yeah. And Remnant Roos asks, are skin crawlers demons or demonic entities? Looking up skin crawlers, it's interesting.
Skinwalkers?
I think he means skinwalkers, but
I think they're supposed to be they're like witches.
But then they're also shapeshifters, which
absolutely witchcraft. The Saint Isidore says witches can demons
can give them sort of those abilities.
Well, there's this whole. This is the patristic discussion. Do they actually have the ability to shapeshift into wolves, to animals? All right, or is this an apparition that they
like an illusion,
almost like a holographic apparition around the body?
Okay.
Like Abbot Regino of Prum in the 10th century in his 2 books on synodal causes, which I can't find for whatever reason, but there's a section in it. You can find that translated 2 years ago, but there's a section in it where he discounts the possibility that demons actually give people the ability to change their morphology. He views it along with, and I think he's following in the tradition of other fathers, that what's actually happening is there are demonic illusions, like holograms, you might say, that are being created, so that these women think that they're flying in the sky on brooms. All right, which he does mention. He said they're not really flying in the sky. The demons are tricking people, and the women's having some sort of like a delusion that the demon's bringing onto her. But that's not actually what's transpiring. Such, but there are others who do think. I think Saint Augustine may be one, and maybe Saint Basil, but I don't quote me on Saint Basil, who did consider the possibility that you could have demonic powers given to a human when they're totally that given over to them, to the demons, where they, like a skinwalker, okay, where they could change their physical shape to resemble like a wolf or some animal or have you.
Right.
Although they don't genetically become a wolf.
Right, because the demons don't have that ability.
They don't have that ability, no. But there's that possibility. So
now, let me see here. Reader John points out, I feel that Transylvania gets a bad rap in this modern folklore. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, Transylvania isn't a bad place, and unfortunately,
there are a lot of Orthodox people there.
Yeah, and the people, even Vlad the Impaler was not. He's kind of demonized.
Remember, a lot of the stuff we hear about Vlad the Impaler comes from Hungarians who disliked him. Contemporary Hungarian sources, granted, but they did not like him because he, didn't necessarily want to go under the King of Hungary. He wanted to maintain the independence for the Orthodox people, but also not be under the Turks, and nor under the Hungarians, because that was always the problem. If you go under the Turks, they're going to persecute you, yes, but if you go under the Hungarians, you may get more freedom, but then Roman Catholicism may start doing the Unia thing. And in Transylvania, people forget a large portion of the population is either Uniate or even straight up Latin Rite Roman Catholic. They got forced into, all right, due to the Hungarian domination. So the question is, they talk about Vlad the Impaler impaling people. Well, the other question is, how many of the people he impaled were, a lot of them were like robbers, murderers. If you were a robber in that area, you were probably a murderer. All right. So I'm not saying there weren't overboard things that happened. Don't get me wrong. But how much, just like the Halloween stuff, all right, how much of what we know is simply made up. So.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, it is a live call-in show. So we will take your questions, comments, and you'll be able to call in. We've pretty much covered all the stuff that we're covering here. So, I mean, we're going to give it another 20 minutes or so and see.
I should also mention that St. Athanasius has a work. St. Athanasius has a work. I'm trying to find it right now, where he does talk about this stuff. Okay, so it is in A work by it looks like, here, I'll give you a link. Oh, well.
Okay, yeah, I can put it up.
Okay. It's called A Treatise on Ghosts. And
Okay.
I have not read the whole thing, but I was reviewing parts of it because I was looking for patristic references. So it says the great Dr. St. Athanasius suggests that good angels appear and not disembodied spirits. He argues that the souls of the dead do not return here to be vagabond and idle wanderers, prowling about and, as it were, linked to their tombs, which seems to be the idea of those dreamers who daily carry provisions of meat and bread and wine to the graveyards, putting viands upon the sepulchres as though the dead came back in the night to eat and drink. In order to show the falsity of this conceit, St. Athanasius, in his 35th questions addressed to Antiochus, says that were it the case, departed spirits not unseldom appear near the graves. The demons would seize the opportunity to manifest themselves in the guise and shape of those recently dead, and familiars would pretend that they were raised from the dead, whereby they would be able to impress upon those who are given to these superstitions all kinds of false doctrines and heresies, and lead them and us too into every wickedness, to our utter undoing at the end. It is clear that St. Athanasius wholly rejected the notions of spirits wandering about their graves to eat and drink and sup. And then, of course, he goes into St. John Chrysostom's homily on Lazarus. So
yeah.
Essentially, it's confirming the same thing. And then he mentions also St. Chrysostom's 29th homily, or Matthew, as well, and such. So this was a very common biblical patristic teaching.
Right. So that's from A Treatise of Ghosts, which can be found on Google Books. So don't forget to look at that.
Of course, I can't vouch for the entire text. Just use it at your own reference and look and cross. It's a French, written in French by the learned Father Noël Talepond. I will probably go back later and look up the references and such. So.
Yeah, but one thing that we want to emphasize here is that even then, even with things that are considered, kind of wondrous and supernatural, etc., that what we find here is that the fathers generally advise us to tread skeptically, because that not simply because of the fact that it's a simple denial of, oh, that's not real, but more importantly, because of the tendency towards demons to inflict damage upon the credulous. So this is something that we have to remember as well, that it's when people have generally spent the better part of, I'd say, probably 2 to 3 decades dismissing Christians as credulous. But what they have proven is that once the old adage, if you don't believe in Christ, you'll believe in anything. Ultimately, we're finding that people are back to believing in anything, including the ridiculous. This is Wazna asked the question. Very interesting. Hold on. I think it's going to be a quick answer, though. Do any of the patristics talk about adrenochrome? I'm going to go on a limb and say no.
I don't think they knew about. I think they did understand that there were occultic practices of taking
blood with children
and maybe spinal fluid or something. Like here, for example, here is a if you click on that link to St. Isidore's
spinal fluid. I'm sorry. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. So Romanides check your vital fluid, your brain fluid today. If you open that link, Father, it takes you to St. Isidore's etymologies.
Opening.
Okay. If you go to so section 9, it says there are magicians who are commonly called evildoers or maleficus by the crowd because of the magnitude of their crimes. They agitate the elements, disturb the minds of people, and slay without any drinking of poison, using the violence of spell alone. Hence also Lucan, in the book Civil War 6:4-5-7, says the mind polluted by no poison or swallowed venom, yet perishes under a spell. So St. Isidore continues and says, with their summoning of demons, they dare to flaunt how one may slay his enemies with evil arts. They make use of blood and victims, and often handle the bodies of the dead. Necromancers, or necromantius, are those by whose incantations the dead brought back to life seem to prophesy and to seek what is asked. For necros means dead in Greek, and divination is called manteia. The blood of a corpse is applied for the cross-questioning. So he's describing basically these rituals that he knew about, the people practiced and such like that.
Right. Granted,
demons are said to love blood, and for this reason, whenever necromancy is practiced, gore is mixed with water, so they are cold more easily by the gore of blood. Then he goes into hydromancers, pythonesses, and various other sorcerers and such he had knowledge of.
Yeah, and so even though the term adrenochrome, which is a very specific term for a very specific substance, is not found, the basic concepts of what they're doing and what they've been using, like in the modern day, to harvest this adrenochrome, if that's the real reason, isn't all that different from what they were doing before. I see Reader John has joined the chat. How's it going?
Going well. Thank you, Father. Your body,
Oh, yeah. What do we have for us today?
Well, I hate to throw it way back to the beginning, but demonic presence. The reason I asked is I remember helping catechumens and even people that are early in their journey in the church, and them just describing certain things that were just consistent across all of them, like feeling this weight on your chest where you couldn't breathe, or like you guys were saying, there was a coldness in the room or a cold spot on them, or it's
a suffocating feeling sometimes.
Yeah, and I suffocated. Like I remember this guy monastery. He just had started the Jesus prayer for the first time, and he just felt like this suffocating presence. And he made it to the what's it called, the Catholicon. And once he got in there and stood before the icon of Christ, everything went away. And he's like, "Okay, I believe now." I was like, "Well, why didn't you believe before?"
Well, I'll tell you, I'm gonna confess something here that I have not ever talked about, but I may as well. When I was a kid, especially growing up as a Roman Catholic, and then later, even at the beginning of my time in Orthodoxy, but it started to vanish more and more, I would get scared to pray. And what I mean by that is that I would say prayers and I would feel everything from the cold feeling you're describing, anxiety. There would even be something inside saying, just stop. And it freaked me out. And for a very long time, I mean, I would still pray. I mean, my mom was a very strict authoritarian, and whether you liked it or not, you weren't going to, even if you weren't going to pray by yourself, you're still going to pray with the rest of the family. But the point is, I would always be afraid of prayer by myself. It wasn't until I became Orthodox and I started to understand the reality of demons and how they work that I realized that these were not simply temptations of the mind, as I thought, but that these were the presence of evil trying to get me to stop doing anything good. So the key there is that it's very important to just power through it. Even if you have, like, once I was told, and this was good advice, that, even when you feel like empty or you feel like there's nothing in your prayer, etc., keep going till you're done. Because it's all, yeah, exactly. And someone points out, the morning prayer of St. Patrick of Ireland has prayers for protection against witches, druids, magicians, heretics, etc. Panic attacks, absolutely. That's all real. That's demonic oppression.
It's funny that you mention it that way, though, because like intellectually we can, like, I remember before I was made a reader, intellectually I knew all this stuff, like, but I remember when I was reading the epistle at the ordination, that I remember feeling like these little hands were on my throat and clenching down on my throat. Wow. As I was reading the epistle, I was like, okay, this is real.
Yeah. I remember hearing a story about a monastery on Athos where literally during prayers, one of the monks was thrown against the wall. And I've told this story a few times, and was literally being choked by the demon. Like, he was just an invisible force that threw him against the wall and was choking him. And the only thing that stopped it was that he managed to get the name of Christ out. That's all he could get, because he couldn't say the whole prayer because he was choking. And as soon as he finished saying Christ, the thing let go and just disappeared.
Yeah.
So you never give up, even if it's trying to choke you. You still want to keep going. Trust me, you will win because God protects us.
Just to go back real quick, Father.
Somebody asked this. Okay. Can the questions be about anything, even off topic? Yes, they can. Continue.
Right.
Sorry.
But if you open up that tab, it goes to the Book of Wisdom, chapter 12.
Doing it right now. 1 second.
Okay, so remember when in the Psalms and the Canticles of Moses and such, when the Israelites were moving into the desert and they were preparing to invade Canaan, all right? And on many of these occasions, they got sidetracked, all right? And there was a famous event where it says they ate, the Psalm says, the Canticle says, they ate the sacrifices of the dead, all right?
Mm-hmm.
The Baal Fagor, all right? They did these wicked things in the wilderness, all right? So what they're talking about is the Canaanite peoples and of the Chaldeans and many of the other Semitic peoples worship Baal and Moloch and Chemosh and various other demons. And they did things where they would kill children and they would eat their flesh.
Wow.
And this is, in fact, one of the reasons that the lore that is given in the wisdom throughout the scriptures, but particularly enclosed in the Wisdom of Solomon, the Book of Wisdom, about why God had decided to completely wipe out the wicked Canaanites. So it says, "For thine incorruptible spirit is in all things. Therefore chastenest thou them by little and little that offend, and warnest them by putting them in remembrance wherein they have offended, that leaving their wickedness they may believe on thee, O Lord. For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thine holy land, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcrafts and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of man's flesh and feasts of blood, with their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls destitute of help, that the land which thou esteemest above all other might receive a worthy colony of God's children." I'd recommend someone, if they wanted to read the whole chapter, because it goes through various things that God did even before he sent Israelites in to try to call some of these people back to repentance, and it didn't work. And so,
yeah.
But you notice the connection of odious works of witchcrafts and wicked sacrifices
And killing children.
Exactly. So that is very, very common reference. Go back straight to antiquity, to the early Middle Ages, to the Salem witch trials, whatever happened there, to the modern period of this attack on children, those innocent souls, as the scripture says, souls destitute of help. That is, children, basically infants can't. No one's going to help them except their parents.
Right.
So they're the ones who have no ability to fight back whatsoever.
Okay, now, yeah, exactly, 100%. And okay, so somebody asked a question. Thank you. What are your thoughts about the Orthodox Study Bible? I'm newish to the channel. In short, the main thing that I can say that I do like about it is that it's actually complete. And what I mean by that is that almost every new and different Orthodox translation we've seen, they finish the New Testament. They don't finish the Old Testament. I don't like the fact that the base text of the Orthodox Study Bible is the New King James. I think its patristic commentaries are kind of soft. If you compare it to something like the Orthodox New Testament that comes out of Domitian Skeet, that's a much better patristic sourcing, but then the text itself is a weird, clunky translation that doesn't even use the word James. It uses Jacobus. Like, there's this weird affectation to it. I haven't seen the Cleaner Work Bible. I just use a Douay Rheims for my personal use. I will refer back to a King James. I will refer to other editions as well. I recommend, especially if you're savvy with the apps, to use Katina or the Aquinas Study Bible that are available online, because these are apps that not only contain different versions of the scriptures, but also contain patristic commentaries alongside them. So I highly recommend that. But unfortunately, if you're looking for a book Bible, I would just go with one of the classics, like a King James or a Douay Rheims, and I'd make my notes accordingly. The bigger, the better. The more space, the better.
Do you use the older versions of the Douay Rheims?
Yeah, if I can get them. I don't like the Challenger revision, but sometimes that's all we have. I have a Challenger revision. Sometimes that's all you have.
Nobody's going to, if you have anything that's, you're going to pay something like $300 to get the non-Challenger.
Yeah,
that's
ultimately. And so that's it's expensive
because you have to buy a reprint that someone did by individually typing out the old 17th century text. All right.
Let me see here. Hold on. Oh no, okay, we got NFTU has a Discord on YouTube channel about homepage. That is true. You can join it. Is there demonic power behind certain symbols? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know if it's if a symbol itself has power, but it is used in incantations, etc., for the demonic. So I would say avoid things like that. I don't know if you have any opinions on that, Vladika, or
sure. I mean, demons. I mean, obviously the famous things like the upside down pentagram, or even the upside right pentagram. To some extent, maybe. They're obviously not just to some extent like the Masonic symbol.
Yeah, it's a call out to demons, is what I would say.
Yeah.
What about in the older text you read about the evil eye?
Now, the evil eye is interesting because that is also what's the word I'm looking for? The evil eye, for those who don't know, is actually common in Greek culture. There are actually exorcisms against the evil eye. I think that
too.
Yeah, as well. And the point is, I tend to think that there's some kind of evil that can be inflicted upon other people who are not Christian, etc. I don't think that we have anything to be afraid of, but again, they can be warded off because, like, the demons will try to afflict you. As we just mentioned, they physically will try to do things. The question is, how much can they really do? I would say worry less about it, and if somebody does try something, as I said, making the sign of the cross solves 90% of issues. Let's see here. Josh, you came on. Josh Lopez came on. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to ask this in the chat, but my message was too long. So right now I've looked and looked. Like I haven't been able to get in contact with Bishop Christodoulos. Yeah.
Okay.
I've actually about this before, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually. I'm actually gonna. If I do, you have like an email, or are you on Discord, or any? How can I get in touch with you so I can give you more information?
I'm on Discord. Are you
on our Discord? The NFTU Discord?
No, but it's on like the YouTube page. I can join it, right?
Yeah. Go. Yeah, please do. I'll try to fill you in on that. No worries.
Okay.
But, we're going to see what else we can do to help with your mission, okay?
Okay, thank you. Because actually, right now I'm in like El Salvador.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're going to see what we can do.
All right, thank you very much. That's all I wanted to ask. Bye.
No problem. And as I said, join us on the Discord. I'll find you. I'll message you. It may not be immediate. I'm doing a couple of things right now, but definitely within the next 24 hours, I'll reach out to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Josh. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Okay. And so let's see here. Bishop Enoch, Bishop Enoch, what's your opinion on Bishop Auxentius? Some say he was incompetent and caused the balkanization of true orthodoxy. Is it true or slander?
Do they mean Archbishop Auxentius?
I think they mean Archbishop Auxentius of Athens.
I have positive views of him. I mean, the problem is that there are more complex situations transpiring in the 70s and 80s within the church in Greece that I think it's not wise to simply attribute it. I mean, yeah, the first hierarch primate is important, and you can always say, well, the final buck stops. Well, does it really? If you're dealing with 16 rolling bishops, it's not like the archbishop can get involved in everybody's diocese and start bossing them around. That's not how not how the church works, because you have to have a synodo. I have positive views of him. That's all I'll say. I think the balkanization question has deeper roots.
It's too simple to say Auxentius good or Auxentius bad.
I mean, I think personally he was good. Obviously,
Yeah, as do I. Yeah.
yes, I think you can find if you wanted me to be more fair in the sense of to like someone who had an opposite view. The most I would say is you can have in church history patriarchs and archbishops who are saints who do their best, but they have terrible situations to deal with. People blame St. John Chrysostom as incredibly divisive. They look at the Synod of the Yoke
Yeah.
for reference, and you can see how everyone went after him, everybody, and he had hardly any supporters. Although in the end he was vindicated. So that's my.
All right, and I agree completely. Okay, so then we got the guy who makes the reprints is a weirdo. He's into alternative medicine. Sometimes alternative medicine is the real medicine.
It depends what kind of alternative medicine you mean. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's like seance crystals or something like that, obviously.
Right? Yeah, obviously. But if it's something like I don't know, like honey, I think that's actually usually more of a.
I mean, but even some of the stuff, like if they say just put magnets on your head, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sound like it's a cult to me. That just sounds like you're using. I don't know. Do magnets work? Is there any truth to magnetic therapy? I don't know.
I've seen there's some things that have been covered with that.
So just like you have to be careful with alternative medicine, you have to be careful with quote unquote mainstream medicine as well.
Exactly. It's all a minefield, except for I hate to say it, but old fashioned wisdom. Are Ouija boards demonic? Forgive me if it's been covered already. Absolutely demonic. You are forgiven. Check earlier in the stream about 30 minutes ago. What should we do if we come across people or customers at work wearing demonic clothing and symbols? Well, I mean, personally, I would try to. I personally, usually, if I'm in a cassock, etc., people wearing that stuff generally start to move away from me. So, I guess that kind of solves itself. But for regular people, unfortunately, it really depends on how much contact you have to have with them. I'm not going to just tell you to start screaming repent at somebody who you don't know what they could, if they're doing it, say, for example, for style reasons. There was a period where Jay-Z and Beyonce, etc., the two Mason couples, they had a line of clothing they were promoting, which was filled with demonic symbols. I don't doubt that 75% of the people buying that clothing were just buying it to be more like Jay-Z and Beyonce. They weren't buying it because they wanted to worship the demons. You might want to have a discussion or be polite, but you may not want to even bring it up if it's like, say, for example, if you're like, oh, well, that came from Jay-Z and that's the cult symbol of a pyramid, then the person's like, sir, this is a Wendy's. You can't, there's just got to be a point where you have to ask yourself, is it the right situation? And that's something that's case by case. I don't know, Vladika, do you have any opinion on that one?
I didn't know. I don't know about fashion. I mean, but if they have the cult symbols, you can have innocent people led into demonic and occult activity.
Yeah.
So they, like you say, they may not be buying it for that reason. Now, whoever this Jay-Z and
is a musician.
Okay, and it's Beyonce. Yeah. I heard her name. She's like a singer of some sort, right?
Right. They're married. He was a rapper, and
okay. Well, that obviously sounds like,
and they're both big Mason types.
Yeah, there sounds like there's some from their part in some occultic stuff transpiring.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and so let me see here. Brother Nathaniel said that when he was a young Jew, that being in a synagogue surrounded by the six-pointed star symbol, and it made him uncomfortable. Understandably, it's the six-pointed star is itself an occult Jewish symbol. It's a Kabbalistic symbol. Somebody asked, what does NFTU stand for? I covered that in the chat. Animal magnetism gave me superpowers. Okay.
The magnetism I'm talking about is like magnets.
Right. Animal magnetism is something else. Animal magnetism
like can you put somebody into an electromagnet and will it cure their cancer? I don't know. Right. I mean, that's more what I'm not talking about.
Yeah, animal magnetism is this idea that somehow men who are more bestial have this this game, like this strength around women or something. And no, that's not magnetism properly. Close, you were close. Yes, eagle eggs are supposed to get you super eagle powers. To my knowledge, eagle eggs just taste like eggs. The jewelry store I work in has evil eye jewelry pieces. Is it a sin that I'm selling it against my will? I mean, that's always a difficult question to answer, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't know what your financial situation looks like, and I don't even know what the employment choices in your situation looks like. Like, I wouldn't apply to work, say, for example, at a Hot Topic. Even though I'm wearing the right color, I just wouldn't fit in because I know that some of the stuff that they're selling is like evil or twisted and wrong. So like I wouldn't apply there. I have maybe you got hired there and you didn't know about it. I mean, you can only be held liable insofar as you partake of it. Most corporations, unfortunately, and I was talking about this in the forum, have an almost pagan agenda at this point, and it's evil for a lot of reasons.
This on people.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to force you into a situation where you have no choice but to concede.
Right, and so
that's also something occultic about people consenting to undergo, some evil procedure in some sense. Now, of course, there is another sense you may argue in which if you're working at a convenience store and the convenience store sells prophylactics, which the church doesn't agree with, do you just say, I'm sorry, I can't ring you up? That's obviously my own view would be that I probably wouldn't work at a convenience store anyway. But if they're selling like bad magazines and that kind of stuff, you don't.
Well, yeah, if they're selling like nudie mags and stuff, then you got to get it. But I mean, like the prophylactic, you don't even know who's using it, and it's none of your business. So it's just and you don't. I mean, I'm not going to argue for it, but the point is, it's just not something it's not a conversation starter that you should really point out. And then Vasily asks, is the Star of David, Star of Remphan / Moloch, or is it just a neo-pagan anti-Semitism propaganda?
I've heard arguments about that. I don't know if anyone's been able to actually do anything. If you have any information about that, like archaeologically, I like to know, because I'm not sure if what we call the Star of David can even be dated before the year 200 BC at latest.
Right. Yeah.
It may be something from the Maccabean period, or maybe later.
Very suspect. Like the modern scholarly. I hesitate to use the word scholarly, but the idea is that it was a symbol on the shield of the warriors. But here's the thing: archaeologically, I've never seen it.
Yeah, well, remember that I definitely don't believe it has any connection to the House of David. So it's not the Star of David.
Correct.
Yeah.
There is this question about. I mean, you can look that up real quick, Father Joseph, on the internet. I mean, I can't quite remember, but I don't even know if it goes back to the Maccabean period.
Yeah.
I mean, it could very well be that maybe there is truth that it was sort of like an occultic Chaldean symbol that somehow got involved after the exile. I don't know.
According to Google, well, this is what Google pulled up when I pulled up Star of David history, and it was pretty telling. Give me just a moment, and it's not me, it's Google. So this is what I got.
Mogan did.
Yeah. Let me see here. I typed in Star of David history in Google and got the Jewish community of Prague was the first to use the Star of David as its official symbol, and from the 17th century on, the six-pointed star became the official seal of many Jewish communities and a general sign of Judaism, although it has no biblical or Talmudic authority.
But that doesn't tell us when's the first use of the symbol in connection with Judaism.
Well, let me just see here. I'm going to look into the Britannica article and see what it says.
Okay.
Britannica, let me see.
Might be the earliest right there.
That's what I'm saying. It might actually
because the older archaeological symbol for Judaism would have been the menorah.
And then it says here Kabbalists popularized the use of the symbol as basically an amulet. Yeah. So it doesn't.
It's more of a talisman, because even in modern day Judaism, when you see them wear any kind of necklace, it either has that symbol or it has like what's the name? Where it has the prayer, the Shema in it.
Okay,
Hero Israel, the Lord our God is one.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, apparently it's a pretty late item in Jewish history. So
yeah, the furthest I've ever gone back is what you were saying, the Kabbalistic influence.
yeah, and let me see,
which is not even Jewish technically. It's a cult.
Okay, so let me see what else we've got. I had no idea the company sells it, so I started working. Well, I mean, ultimately, I can't make a recommendation. Like, if it's something that you don't feel comfortable selling, if it's not that popular, I would just say, ask a coworker if they can sell it instead. That might be the easiest thing. But let me see here. Corporations today trying to force Christians to embrace the want agenda. Yeah, okay, I agree. I know I just censored myself on my favorite word, but that's because I'm a hypocrite and we're monetized now. And so let me see here. Yep, we got that answered. It's on BitChute. I can put a link. Thank you very much. Yeah, I see that you joined the Discord. Be patient with me, but I will get to it. In any case, let me see here. So I'm looking to see if there's any more comments, questions. We're at 1 minute 40. Now, Reader John, I forgot to did I ask if you had any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just I had the question about the demonic presence earlier.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, we're getting more questions now. Let me see here. Can things like houses be possessed? Dolls, items. I feel like this is the child's play question.
Demonic. I think there is some material evidence of like with it's so-called the proverbial haunted house is a demon, a demonic presence that's residing in a place for some reason.
Well, yeah, but I think when you start asking like dolls and items, what that's a reference to is, well, demons kind of hang out like in dolls, like Chucky, and like murder people. And there's that one YouTube video about this creepy doll that's been around for like 200 years, and it's like possessed by like something.
I want to do more research on that, but I'm
the Annabelle doll.
I'm geared to a negative. Yeah, I'm geared to a negative answer on that.
Didn't the demons reside in the stone idols within the temples?
Yeah, you're right. The demon. Reader John makes a point. Demons did reside in idols.
Yeah.
So why couldn't they reside in idols? Now the question is, it's one thing for demons to reside in the idols or a cultic doll or something like that.
Yeah,
it's quite another thing for the demon to start moving around the golden statue of Zeus and walking around the city.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, like Ghostbusters 2 or something like that. That's a little bit
unrealistic.
Yeah, it's a little bit different for that to transpire.
Yeah, so just bless your household objects. Just, if you're really worried that like it's.
And remember, Saint Athanasius in his Life of Saint Anthony the Great talks about how Saint Anthony at one point beheld like the demonic hosts in the sky, and he made the sign of the cross. All right, and they all evaporate. All right, so we never underestimate the power of the sign of the cross and the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. The demons fear that name above all other names, because there's that's the name above all other names, as the apostle says.
Was it also Saint Anthony who was talking to the dead animal bones that kind of looked like they were talking?
Are you talking about the skull or the dead?
Yeah, the skull.
Oh, yeah. That's Saint. I think that might be Saint Macarius the Great. Okay. I can't quite remember.
Yeah,
he came across a skull when he was walking through the desert. He picked it up and he wondered who it was, and they talked to him, and God allowed. It was a pagan high priest from the ancient Egyptian period, and he allowed the man from hell to speak to him.
To let him know how it was.
Yeah, that this is terrible in hell. He's in hell. And such. So that does.
And I think there was even, and I think that if I remember correctly, that was in terms of praying for people in hell. I think Saint Macari asked if it helped, and basically the demon said it can be some small comfort.
Well, it wasn't a demon that was talking; it was the soul.
Not demon, a guy in hell. Sorry, my mistake. Okay, and Wasna asks, at what point can demons influence or possibly possess AI? I once again refer back to the programmer level. There is far more nefarious influence that you will find among the people who are programming AI systems, large language models, etc., than the actual programs themselves. We've been doing more and more study on AI, and we have a very helpful member of our community who's working on that and has been working on different things with it. And what we're discovering is that when large language models, they basically are like massive Rolodexes of information, and then they kind of try to guess the right answer based on massive swaths of information. That said, it can sometimes produce a relatively credible appearance of an answer, but sometimes it will hallucinate and hallucinate is the term that they actually use in these in the AI community, where it will just give a ridiculous made-up answer and say it with authority. And I think, Bishop Enoch, you mentioned that you were trying out in AI, because when we started doing more stuff earlier this year, we mentioned trying to start Church AI, and we haven't given up on any of those things. It's just there's more and more stuff to do. But one thing we did do is GPT for All, which includes a number of different large language models. And I guess Lanico went to town on it, and then he started noticing stuff, and I'll let you talk about that.
Let me try to remember. I began to ask it questions like, I'd say, have you read the church, all 38 volumes of the Nicene, ante-Nicene, Nicene, and post-Nicene fathers? And it said, yes, I have read this. I was like, okay, well, let me ask you some questions.
Oh, just because the viewers may not know this, when you're building your model, you have to give it sources. So,
this was an AI called, it was something called Orca. It was supposed to be had the largest database and all this other stuff, and it didn't know what it was talking about. I asked it; could it translate from Latin to English? It said yes, it could. So I gave it. I said, "Can you read read a link to a PDF file on the internet?" It said, "Yes, I can." So I gave it a link to Vigilius Atapsis's Against Eutyches. And I said, translate the first paragraph for me. And it said, this is from Pope Benedict's Ubi Caritas. I mean, stop. That's not right at all. And I argued, and after a little bit, it admitted, no, I can't read Latin. It actually admitted it did not know Latin, and that it was just making up an answer because it felt it was the best way to continue the conversation.
Yeah, so keep in mind that
it said that at that point I was like, this is a sham. This is not believable.
It's not nearly as developed as people want to believe. We're still working on it, and I believe it will be positive.
Now the Google I should tell you, here's why I thought it might have worked, and I don't mean to get too off the topic here.
Yeah, no,
but
please.
The Google Translate has since this January of this year massively improved for Latin to English. I didn't know about that until Roger Pierce's antiquarian on his blog posted about this. So I did experiments, and I was like, yeah, the Google Translate at this point can go from Latin to English and make it a readable text. You might want to do nuanced translations. I still do my own translations, use as a base text, and such, because sometimes it doesn't get everything right. But that was a major improvement. So I was assuming maybe this Orca program would know how to do the same, and it just simply did not know any of that. To me, it seemed like it was a sophisticated machine, a sophisticated program that could give the appearance of just talking to you and just go round and round. But it never really had any ability to make any kind of substantial comments. So
now I will say this: the developer that we've been working with has made some progress in that area. And one thing to point out, Vladika, is that a translator model is not the same as the LLM model that GPT uses. It's a totally different kind of program.
Well, I understand, but why not just say, I don't know how to do this? Why lead me on for...
Because it doesn't know anything. What it actually does is it's kind of like, you know how, like, let me put it to you this way. You know how, like, the lotto machine, like, spins a bunch of balls around, like on TV.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, now imagine each of those balls were pieces of information. This is a much bigger lotto machine. And so what it's trying to do is it's trying to narrow down the balls to certain numbers, and it puts in pieces and pieces of a phrase which it thinks, based upon its gigantic repository of information you'll want to hear. It has no concept whatsoever as to whether the answer is right or wrong.
Yeah,
it's literally guesswork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just to get back to the topic real quick, just so everybody understands, or to Orthodox Christians, we don't celebrate Halloween. That even the appeals to Halloween as being well, first off, if you were going to celebrate old calendar, if you're going to celebrate like the Vigil of All Saints, it wouldn't even be on October 31st on the new calendar to begin with. All right. Secondly, the original reason for November 1st in the West being adopted was due to the Council of 731 that condemned iconoclasm. That was actually the original reason because the original Roman Feast of All Saints was like May 24th. That's like dedication to Saint Mary, Matron, and All Saints, or something like that. But it seems to me that original rationale for November 1st and the vigil of it on the previous day has long since been lost, if you understand my meaning, Father Joseph, by the vast majority of people who they view Halloween as just simply as this time for dressing up, trick-or-treating, and watching horror movies, I suppose, and doing like a seances or Ouija boards and thinking it's funny. All right, and that's also another dangerous aspect of it. So,
we have another question. Matsuka Stephanie Dubas writes, "Can departed souls remain around their loved ones?"
Again, you do have mention in like St. John Maximovich talks about that. I think it's the first 2 or 3 days the angels will take the souls around the house and the family to see what's going on. That's part of the particular judgment. I don't manage to explain how that can transpire and how that takes place. But I would say it's not a permanent thing. And your departed loved ones, their souls have all long since gone to judgment, and you can still pray for them,
right?
And remember, Saint Theodore. Now, obviously, there's a difference between the public and private prayer of the Church, because of whether someone was died as an Orthodox Christian or not. Because remember, Saint Theodore the Studite had to address the question when people wrote to him during iconoclasm. They said, "Well, my grandfather." Died as part of under this iconoclast bishop or something like that. And, as a layperson, can I, give an offering for him in church?" And St. Theodore the Studite's like, well, they can't be a public offering, but you can certainly pray for him privately. And however God affects that, he affects that and such.
This kind of begs the question for me, Vladika. So we know the evil one can appear as an angel of light.
Yes.
Can he also deceive the people that are still living?
Absolutely.
2%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would never, if someone's like dead wife or husband appear to them, even if they were saying, "Please pray for me," I would just simply make the sign of the cross and disregard whatever happened. Because you wouldn't want to pray for them anyway. So, But remember what St. John Chrysostom says in that homily. He says in reference to Acts 17. Because remember that girl was saying, "Oh, these are servants of the Most High God," and St. Paul turned around and exorcised the demon right out of her. All right. Because he didn't need the testimony of demons. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So even if a demon appears to someone in the guise of a dead relative or friend, and says, "Oh, please pray for us," and etc., just make the sign of the cross and totally and drive it away and ignore it. Because obviously, remember the angels appeared to some of the fathers of the desert demons appeared to some of the fathers of the desert as good angels. All right. So now, what I was saying is that you do have a mention in various patrician sources of like angels taking souls around to see things. All right, that's not the same as the soul having its own capacity to wander around its own free will.
Yeah,
what have you.
Right.
Because you can think of I can't remember the name of it. The famous Irish saint who died and his soul was taken up, and the angel sort of took him around the earth, showed him the wickedness that men were doing, and then brought him back to his body, and he was raised from the dead. I can't remember the name of that saint for some reason. But obviously, that's the dispensation God is allowing, where an angel is taking a disembodied soul to different places. All right, that's not the same as my dead uncle, Uncle Bob. He's just living around the house now. That's not Uncle Bob if there is actually some presence there. That's demonic presence.
That's some sort of evil.
The way I
go
was
ahead.
looking at it is that grief is it elicits a lot of powerful emotions.
Yeah.
That kind of open the gateway, as it were, for influence. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Because then people want to. I remember when I was younger, after my grandfather passed away, my mother's father, my grandmother kept on thinking that I thought I heard the horn to the truck blaring like your granddaddy was out there maybe and such. Or I felt somebody was sitting on the foot of the bed. I said, Granny, you got to remember, because she went to church, it was grew up as a evangelical family and such, Protestant family, and obviously it's not Orthodox. I said, Granny, you got to remember that you got to be very careful with this because, this could simply be the devil trying to trick you and trying to take advantage of things. So again, like a grieving woman, old woman who missed her husband she was married to for 40, 50 years, what could the demons do? And because I think a lot of what it was, and what I saw with some people when I was growing up, like that generation, like my grandmother's generation, it was very easy for a lot of them to start folding into things like trying to go to psychics. All right. Yeah. Even though they went to church, I was like, I would tell this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, they weren't systematically thinking about it for whatever reason, because there were major problems in Protestantism, even and such. Going to psychics, that's like going to a witch. That's pretty much the same, a diviner. They're not in communion with your dead relatives. They're in communion with demons, or at best they're tricking you. At absolute best, it's deception. At absolute best, more likely it's a direct, straight up demonic influence exercising itself through such a medium. And there's a reason, again, that the Christian emperors and kings, under the influence of saints, prohibited all of that. All right, legally prohibited all of that.
Yep.
We did not want that society anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, Vasily mentions in the prayers of exorcism there are listed every kind of demons and materials they possess.
Yes.
So let me see here. And Tikon says hello.
That's familiar because in the Western Rite consecration of Epiphany water, it's mentioned of driving demons away from houses and fields and things like that. So yes, physical objects.
And then Wasman points to desensitization of evil. That's exactly what this entire thing is about. So avoid it like the plague if you can. And so let me see here. We are going to, let me see here. We've got like 2 minutes. I think we're going to close out because we've covered all the questions. And we've, covered a lot of different subjects here. So give me one moment because I'm just going to point out again that, let's see here. Hold on. I was just getting my stuff together. If anyone else has any questions, first off, I'd like to thank everyone who came on today, including Reader John and Josh Lopez. I would like to say thank you to everybody who has been supporting the channel and who's been helping us out. We're going to get back to it. We're going to be doing book reviews coming up this week. We have some Western Rite books to look at from the Enochian groups, and we can give you a general thing, but we're going to go, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, section by section to see why you shouldn't use these books. I want to thank everyone who contributed with comments. I want to thank everyone who had questions, who had something to say, wanted to say hello. We're always grateful. Again, there's going to be more surprises coming, trust me, in the next few weeks. Since 2004, NFTU has been reporting on events related to true orthodoxy as well as underreported events relating to the greatest heresy of our age, humanism, a global web of interreligious syncretism in which the hierarchy of world orthodoxy is now inextricably enmeshed. When we began this, we never thought we'd be in the middle of a global war for the salvation of souls. But things never work out the way we plan, and now I'm going full-time to expose the ecumenical heresy where it can be found, help Orthodox Christians find their way home, and do my part to stop the globalists from fulfilling their plans of one world religion, the religion of Antichrist. Today we need your help. Subscribe and support us at NFTU.net, on our subscribe store, or on Odyssey. Keep watching. We're just getting started. Okay. Someone came in with a last comment, and I think we're going to close out the night with this. I've heard it said that St. Gabriel of Bialystok was martyred as a result of occultic blood rituals. Does any documentation exist that points to this element of the story as being true?
There is contemporary material, but it is heavily censored on the English-speaking internet. The wiki and Orthodox wiki articles have been heavily edited. You have to go to, I think, the Russian wiki article, and even that's been edited to find this material because they do not want you to
know the truth.
Yeah, because of who killed them.
Yeah.
So,
with that, thank you again, Reader John, for being here. Josh for being here. All of you in the chat for being here. Vladika, thank you so much for helping with the stream again. And keep watching. We're just getting started, and you'll be seeing more stuff coming up later in the week. So have a good night, everyone. And Vladika, give the blessing.
Through the prayers of Holy Fathers, the Lord Jesus Christ, your God, have mercy on us. God bless. Amen.
Amen.